To brief us on this issue, we have with us on the dais Dr. V. Anant Nageshwaran, Chief Economic Advisor, Ms. Devjani Ghosh, Distinguished Fellow Niti Aayog, Dr. Dalip Singh, ADG MOSPI, Ms. Neha Srivastav, Deputy DG MOSPI. We will also be joined by Dr. Saurabh Garg, Secretary MOSPI. He will join us in a few moments from now. Warm welcome to all the dignitaries on the dais. To begin with, I invite Dr. Dalip Singh to make a presentation on the trial index of service production. The format will be like this. First, we'll have the presentation, followed by remarks by all the senior officials here. So over to you, Dr. Dalip Singh.
Welcome to the official launch and release of India's inaugural monthly Index of Service Production with base year 24-25. As you know, this is a historical milestone in India's macroeconomic indicator framework because we already had indices for, GDP, IIP, CPI, but for services sector, it was a data gap which we have filled now. So, as you can see that during the last decade or so, since 2013-14, the contribution of services sector has become more than that of the manufacturing sector. So from that perspective also it was important that we start capturing services sector at a more high frequency level. So with that consideration in mind, MOSPI has worked on the preparation of this index of service production. And during the last few years, we had been trying this, but because of the availability of data sources, or you can say the challenges in the availability of data for the diversity of subsectors of the services sector, we could not bring out an index for services sector. But now, with the availability of GST data, which captures a wide range of subsector of the services sector, it has become possible. So I will touch upon some of these aspects and then discuss with some of the numbers, and then we will have a question and answer session. So my outline of the presentation will be about this ISP and the technical advisory committee that advised us on this. Process undertaken for compilation, what are the data sources that we are covering, scope and coverage, exclusions that are not covered in ISP as of now, what are the conceptual issues that we faced in this aspect, and how it will be disseminated from now on. So these are the various important aspects that I will touch upon. So as I mentioned, services sector now covers about 53% of the GVA, and it has filled an important data gap. And it will now be a counterpart of IIP. Both IIP and ISP, they will capture the formal sector of the economy. So that way, this will be done. And immediate use of ISP, as I can see it, is that it will provide us month-wise, year-on-year changes in the sectoral performance, as well as it will be an input to national accounts statistics for better assessment of the services sector. It will also provide us support to researchers and others for analytical and policy framework. In fact, some of the, if I share the country practices, many countries are doing index of service production, for example, UK, European Union, South Korea, China, Japan. But there are some who are also not doing it, but they are doing a counterpart. For example, US, they have a quarterly survey for the services sector. So that way they are capturing the services. In order to work upon index of service production, Ministry of Statistics constituted a technical advisory committee under the chairmanship of Ms. Debjani Ghosh, who is available here on the dais. We have 23 members in this committee from academia, industry association, concerned ministries, departments, and we looked into these terms of reference to review the international best practices, to review the data sources, expand scope of the ISP coverage, SOP for compilation of indices, and methodological aspects including base year, item basket, weights, compilation frequency, etc. So the process undertaken, it's almost 1 year since we started this, and we had 4 meetings of the TAC. Then we also had sector-specific discussions with respect to ministries and departments. We published an approach paper which outlined the detailed methodological framework in public domain on 27th April. Thereafter, a FAQ was also launched to assist in the understanding of the methodology. And now we also had a report of the TAC released on 7th July. Some of the important data sources for ISP we have considered. Major part is administrative data. And in that we have 2 parts. From the ministries, some of the data we could get was on air transport, railways, water transport for the freight, banking and insurance. Remaining administrative data came from the GST, which covered trade, repair, accommodation and food, water transport, passenger, road transport, warehousing, postal and courier activities, telecommunications, real estate, IT, and computer-related services, administrative and support services. 2 important areas which could not be covered in this are health and education, and the reason is that in GST, these 2 sectors are exempt. So in GST, this data is not fully captured. Partial capture is there, but full capture is not there. That's why we are saying that it is yet to be fully captured. In terms of scope and coverage, our National Industrial Classification 2025 provides a full scope of what services sector constitutes. So we have taken the all the section G to V of the services sector, and wherever we could find the data, we have included in our services ISP. So based upon these data sources, it is a comprehensive index, except for the exclusions that I have indicated here. Core government activities could not be covered because they are already exempt, they are not covered. Activities dominated by non-market activities, and activities mainly dominated by the informal sector. Just to give an examples of this, for example, in core government activities, public administration and defense, about 10.7% of the GVA is not covered. Other financial services, for example, the activities of the RBI as a central bank, which is again exempt from the GST, it is not covered. Other financial services, entire thing is covered in that. Similarly, ownership of dwellings, which is on account sector fully incorporated, which is also exempted from GST. So this is also not covered in this, and other services which I have listed here. So in all, you can say about 30% of the share of services because of these things could not be captured. So remaining 70% we are considering. Out of this, 60% is already, we have released the numbers today. Remaining 10% constitutes health and education. So we are expecting that we will soon get the data from that, and we will be able to include that. So some of the important conceptual considerations. First one is, what does ISP represent? So ISP, like IIP, it is a measure of output, unlike GVA, which is brought out by the national account. So this is the caveat we want to brought out, that when we compare the numbers, we have to keep this in mind, that ISP is a proxy of GVA. It measures output, which can be considered as a proxy of GVA. So, and because GVA is difficult to estimate on a monthly basis, so that's why we need a proxy for this. So we are using this as a proxy indicator. Second important consideration is that when we are using GST data, which is in value terms, we require deflators so that we can bring out the volumes. So for that purpose, we have tried to identify what is available. So recently, first of all, for example, there are certain sectors where we do not require a deflator. For example, for air transport, water transport, railways, we already have a volume-based data available. For example, in terms of passenger kilometers, for example, for railways or air transport, it is already available, so we do not need it. For wholesale trade, we have WPI already available, so we are using that. For sector-specific CPI, wherever we could find, we are using CPI in place of services PPI. And reason is that service PPIs, as of now, it is available at a quarterly frequency. And we want to bring out our index on a monthly frequency. So what is the next best available indicators that we are using here? So sector-specific CPIs for retail trade, water transport, road, warehousing, all these sectors, it is available. So we are using that. Similarly, CPI services, there are certain sectors, for example, IT and computer related, professional, scientific and technical, administrative and support services. For this, there was no corresponding deflator available. So we have created this CPI services as an indicator, and we are using this for deflating. And third one is CPI general, which is used for banking, insurance, and repair and maintenance services. Another important conceptual issue that differs us from IIP was that in IIP we had a fixed panel of products and fixed number of factories from which we were collecting the data. But in case of GST data, it is a mandatory comprehensive administrative data sets. And every month, if say new entities start filing GST, or some of the old entities which are no longer covered, or they have gone out of business, or they have changed line of their job, so they will automatically, dynamically be in and out of our frame. So that way it is a dynamic panel from which we will be getting the data. So that difference is there. So on a pattern of this, in IIP also we have started this concept of substitution and augmentation of factories so that our index remains attuned to the latest realities of the economy. So besides this, how we will be disseminating this index in the long run? So I have given here, now we are releasing the trial indices. As I mentioned before, we are capturing only 60% as of now, that's why it is a trial. Then we will be releasing it on a monthly basis, monthly frequency. Release date 29th of every month or the next working day. And our data will also be available on eSankhiki portal of the MOSPI. Next release will be on 29th July for the month of May. So just I will give some of the trends which we have seen in some of the sectors. For example, wholesale trade, as you can see, index has gone up from 104 in April 25 to 119. And of course, there are ups and downs as per the economic trends in the GST data or the relevant source agency data. In case of retail also, similar kind of trend is there from 105 in April 25, now it is 137. As you can see, there are certain peaks and troughs, and these are mainly because that in the GST, many of the entities, they kind of file their returns at the quarter end or month end, and there is a spike because of that. Similarly, repair and maintenance, as you can see, similar kind of trend is there. Accommodation is and food, it is relatively more stable, as you can see. And growth is from 100.71 to 138.14. Railways, again, a more or less, you can say from 99, say it remains the more or less similar. In between, there are changes. But we can see that there is a sluggish contribution overall during the year. In road transport, again, in the first month, there was a steep increase from April 25 to May 25, but thereafter it remained stable. But in the last 2 months, there is a significant up and down. Similarly, warehousing and support activities. As you can see in many of the cases, in the March figures, if you see, there is a peak. And that is mainly because of, as I explained before, that they file their annual returns with much more precise data. So that could be the reason. Postal and courier activities, similar indexes there. Information and broadcasting, similar trend as you can see. Telecommunications is a very healthy growth, as we can see from 96.87 to 118.94. Banking, very healthy growth, continuous. Similarly, insurance also. information, IT and computer related services, then real estate sector, professional, scientific and technical services, administrative and support services, art, entertainment and recreation services. So what we have tried to do is that we have mapped all these broad sectors with our NIC, National Digital Classification categories, and that's why we have been able to bring it out. But we require better weights when we want to bring it the overall ISP. So just these are the numbers. Overall growth I have given here. Growth in April 26 for the last month as compared to the same month in the last year. So April 26 over April 25. So these are the numbers. As you can see, in many of the sectors, we have double-digit growth that we have seen, except for a few sectors where it is less. So this is the last question that you might have in mind. So we have just trying to, why is the overall ISP is not being, though I have already explained, but just to be clear, 19 subsectors we have covered here. So that way coverage is more or less there, except for health and education. And because we could cover only 60%, so we are not bringing out the overall ISP. Weights for aggregation are available at the broad subsectoral categories. And weights at NIC 2-digit level will be available from our survey, which is at present going on. Annual survey of incorporated services sector enterprises. So work in progress to compile ISP of the subsectors like health and residential care, which has a share of about 2.96%, education 7%, and ownership of dwellings 14.45. So I believe when we are able to cover these three, we will be able to reach beyond 80%. And at that time, we'll be in a position to say give an overall ISP for the country. So I think with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dilipji. Now I request Dr. Anant Nageshwaranji to make his remarks. Over to you, sir.
Good afternoon, everybody, and to my distinguished colleagues and friends, Ms. Devyani Ghosh, officials of the Ministry of Statistics, friends from the media. So it is one more feather in the many caps, or one more feather among many feathers in the cap of MOSPI over the last several years, making it more and more easier for us to understand what is going on in the Indian economy. So I congratulate Secretary, who will be on his way soon, and other officials present here for the continued effort to throw spotlight on the real economic activity in the country. And we are all very grateful to them for this continuing work. So, but in general, as long as most of us have been reading the Indian economic data, we have had a monthly number for the smaller half of the economy, and no monthly number for the larger half, and this fills the gap. Industry, which is little under a third of the gross value added, has had an index of industrial production, as he said it, for decades. Services, which have been more than half of the gross value added since 2013-14, have had nothing of that kind, and we have been driving, therefore, with the headlamp pointed towards the shorter side of the road, and from today, that is now changing. Of course, services are not easy to measure because, and it is worth saying why it is the case. A car leaving a factory can be counted. A ton of cement can be weighed. But a consultation, a software release, a train journey, a loan sanctioned, these are all produced and consumed at the same moment. There is nothing to weigh and nothing to put in a warehouse. Therefore, every statistical system in the world, and not just India, was built first for the factory, because the factory was easier. Counting widgets is easier. Getting a monthly measure of services is therefore a real achievement, and therefore the colleagues in Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation deserve a special round of applause for making this happen. What has made it possible is something that was never designed for statistician at all. Every month, lakhs of enterprises file returns on their sales under the goods and services tax. Those returns, aggregated and classified and adjusted for prices, can tell us how much the formal services economy actually produced. And they can tell us this without asking a single business to fill in one additional form. I would like to dwell on that for a moment. The best statistical systems are the ones that ask the least of the people they measure. Here, a tax reform has quietly become an information system. Our digital public infrastructure has quietly become statistical infrastructure. This is a very good return on an investment that was made for entirely different reasons. What will this give us? First, it will give us time. Policy is made in real time, but much of our best data arrives late. When a sector slows, we would like to know within weeks, not after the annual accounts are closed. A monthly reading lets us tell a pausing wobble from a genuine turn. It lets us see whether a policy measure is finding its way through the economy or not. It gives businesses and investors a common set of facts to argue over, which is usually better than arguing without any. And it puts services at last on the same footing as industry in the way we watch, measure, and observe the economy. This is, of course, a trial series, and I want to explain why this trial series is a strength rather than a hesitation. No index in the world is born finished. The IIP has been revised many times over its life, and it is better for it. Releasing trial indices is a way of saying in public that we are confident about the method, but still want to see how it behaves before it becomes the official number. It invites all of you to test it, question it, and tell us where it does not ring true or where it captures the reality very well. Statistics improve in the open, and this is a mark of confidence on the part of MOSPI, not one of doubt. There is work ahead, and I will mention this. The index measures volumes, and we also saw on the data, but the data arrives as values, so everything depends on how we adjust for prices, and that is why the slide that we saw on the kind of deflator use is important for us to know how it is deflated. Building price indices for services is, of course, not an easy task, as it is the case for goods in general. And that is the most valuable investment we can make, and we will continue to make in producing this index of services production. Coverage will widen, and as he pointed out, health services and own-dwelling businesses, if they're added, that will take us almost all the way to about 85 to 90% of the formal services sector activity in the economy. So one request, which if I may be allowed to make that request, to all those who will use this number, and there are many of you in this room, read the series, not a single reading, not a single month reading. A monthly index is a thermometer, not a diagnosis. It will move about, as we saw, because it is not seasonally adjusted. March sees a lot of GST filings. It will move about, it will be revised, and the first few months will tell us less than the first few years. Data is there to narrow the space in which we can fool ourselves. It doesn't spare us the work of thinking. So in other words, do not get fixated on a single number or a single wiggle in the series. I will end my remarks by congratulating Dr. Saurabh Garg, who is not here yet, and his colleagues in the ministry, Ms. Debyani Ghosh for heading the Technical Advisory Committee and other members, and also the partners in the GST network. This is a very careful, patient piece of institution building of the kind that rarely makes headlines and quietly makes everything else possible. India is, by and large, a services economy, although we are working on making it more balanced. Over the years, that will materialize as well. And from today, given the fact that India is more than half of services in the overall economy, we will now be able to watch it month by month, thanks to MOSPI and thanks to the Technical Advisory Committee's work. Thank you all for being here, and I'm very happy to be invited to be part of this release of the trial indices of services production.
Thank you, sir. Now I request Ms. Debjani Ghosh to make her remarks. You can make one if you want.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for being here today. I think, as the Chief Economic Advisor said, what we are releasing today is one of those transformative chapters in India's economic story, which may not make a lot of headlines, but this is what's going to build the foundation. You've already heard from Mr. Singh that services today is more, accounts for more than half of India's GVA. It is the largest and the most dynamic engine of our economy. And if you think of it in simple terms, it is where most of our youngsters, our young people, are finding work. It is where a lot of India's new enterprises are being created. It is also where India competes globally from a position of strength. We are still known for the strength of our service sector, especially the tech services, and we are seen as in a leadership position in this sector. But this sector is tremendously diverse, extraordinarily diverse. It spans multiple sectors: trade, transport, logistics, hospitality, telecoms, financial services. You saw Mr. Singh's presentation. And these are activities that pretty much touch every household and every business and every single day. That's the importance of this sector. And the paradox that we have been dealing with is that for something that is such an important part of our economy, it is also that one thing which has been most difficult to measure. And as both the Chief Economic Advisor and Mr. Singh mentioned, there was good reason for this. Unlike manufacturing, where, as he said, you can count it, you can weigh it, services is mostly intangible and frequently do not have a directly observable measure of output. As I said, it's also a tremendously diverse sector. And the other thing that we found is that the data sources across every sector in services varies. So that became a huge challenge. So when Secretary Mosby had reached out to me to say, can you chair the Technical Advisory Committee, I knew that this was going to be one of the most challenging tasks that we were taking on. But the initial discussions with Dr. Garg, as well as the team, made one thing very clear for us, that we cannot keep using the difficulty and the complexity of the task as an excuse for not doing it. This had to happen, because if you can't measure it, then unfortunately it's not seen as being real. So we decided to take a very fresh approach to the work. I mean, the first thing was, while there's a lot of learning in what has happened or not happened in the past, that is not going to shape our thinking of what needs to happen in the future. So we gave ourselves the luxury to say, let's start completely afresh. Let's start completely afresh and start. It's an old problem, but let's not look at the old solutions. Let's look at a completely new way of solving this problem. So the good thing is that, with time, a lot had improved from the past attempts. For example, over the past few years, our statistical and administrative data ecosystem has improved significantly. We now have access to the high-frequency GST data on the outward supplies of service-producing enterprises. We also have a lot of work happening and the launch of annual survey of incorporated services sector enterprise, or SCs, hopefully will complement the annual survey of industries and provide reliable information for sectors like health, education, etc., which are not adequately covered today. So keeping all these changes that are happening, we sort of approach this challenge with 5 guiding principles. First, as I said, apply a fresh lens. Second, look at every sector and figure out the best available data for that sector. Initially, the thought was, how do we get something that's standard across? That was not going to happen. So how do we have a differentiated approach and we understand what data serves each sector in the best possible way? We were very clear from start, and I give a lot of credit to the MOSPI team. Even in this presentation, it was clearly called out what the limitations are. So we were very clear from start that we will be very, very transparent and very honest about what can be done and what cannot be done, what are the limitations, and design a framework that can continuously improve. In industry, we have, especially in the tech industry, we have this term called iterative development. So you don't wait for the perfect product, but you throw it out there and you continue to improve the product as you get feedback. So that's the mindset we brought to it. And last but not the least, we're not going to wait, or we're not going to allow perfection to become the enemy of progress. Because if you continue to wait for the perfect solution, you're never going to have a solution. So saying, these were the principles that guided us. We started by examining everything that we could examine under the sun, starting with international practices, what works, what doesn't. We undertook a very detailed evaluation of all the administrative data sets, GST data, and also looked at some of the future surveys and how would they change the landscape. What emerged from this due diligence that the MOSPI team did was very encouraging, because what we started realizing is that India now has sufficiently rich digital and statistical ecosystem data for us to actually begin compiling a meaningful indicator for the service sector production. Okay? So based on this finding, what we as a committee have recommended is a differentiated approach, matching each sector with the most appropriate and reliable source of data for that sector. So for most market-based services, including trade, road transport, accommodation, IT, professional services, real estate, business services, we have recommended using GST outward supply data. Okay? For sectors which have very strong administrative data systems like railways and transport, banking, insurance, we have recommended building on the respective sector-specific data sets. And for sectors that currently sit outside the purview of both, they sit outside GST, as well as they may not have the right administrative data systems, we've basically proposed a phased approach where we've said, right now, these will be excluded, and as the data system improves, or as the new surveys like ASEES kick off and we are able to capture these sectors adequately, we will start bringing them in. So we've been very careful to explicitly recognize the current exclusions, coverage gap, and most importantly, and I think this is where the maximum amount of debate happened, how do we develop the appropriate deflator methodologies? So based on all of this, the committee recommended that the initial index of service production should be a trial index for the covered services sector. This will allow, as the Chief Economic Advisor said, this will allow a framework that can be tested, that can be validated, and progressively strengthened before it becomes structured or institutionalized into a comprehensive indicator. So this was the thinking behind the development. This was the thinking that the committee, along with MOSPI, brought to the table. I would really like to thank the ministry and especially the secretary, Dr. Saurabh Garg, for the tremendous amount of trust he has placed in the committee and the team to get this done. The members of the committee, domain experts, we had tremendous amount of stakeholder consultations, all the partner institutions who contributed with their time and expertise. Tremendous gratitude to all of them. This truly has been a very genuinely collaborative effort across government, academia, and industry. And we hope that as the methodology matures, it will expand the coverage, and we hope that the index of service production will become an increasingly valuable tool for economic analysis, policy making, and business decision making. But before I end, I have to express my sincere, heartfelt appreciation and gratitude to the team at MOSPI, Mr. Singh, Neha, and their entire team. This has been one of the most hardworking, committed teams that I have had the privilege and the pleasure to work with. We were faced with innumerable challenges. I mean, there were hundreds of reasons as why it could not be done. But this team always figured out a way how we could find a solution to move this forward. So, on behalf of the committee, I would really like to thank the entire team for one, giving us the opportunity to contribute and learn from you, and at least putting out the trial. And I think this is a huge step forward. And I do hope that this becomes a significant milestone in MOSPI's effort to build a much more comprehensive and data-rich understanding of India's economy. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debjani ma'am. And now we'll take questions. We'll start with the first row or whoever it may be. 24. Okay.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Ma'am, my question is that when this trial series is going to end and when we will have the full series, number one. Number two, we have a time lag of almost 2 months in releasing that index or the subsector index. And since after this, we will also have index by a private survey. So there could be some kind of confusion that which is giving the clearer picture. So is there any possibility of reducing the time lag from 2 months, sir? Thank you very much, sir.
I think before we take further questions, I welcome Dr. Saurabh Garg, Secretary MOSPI. Sir, would you make some remarks before? We have already on the question answer session, but most remarks are welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I hope it's working, yeah. So I am blissfully unaware of what the CA and Debjani would have said, but I don't have much to say. Just a few things I just want to highlight. The presentation was obviously in detail. So first is obviously that the services contribute more than half the GVA. So I think the fact that we now have something tracking the services on a monthly basis is something, a big addition to the overall macroeconomic parameters. The second, apart from 50% of GDP, it's more than 30% of the employment also. So both these indicators show the importance of the service sector, which I'm sure Ananta and Debjani would have mentioned. So apart from the IIP, which is there, now we have something for the services, we have for manufacturing, and in any case, agriculture, we have a large number of indicators. So to that extent, we are covering the entire economy, agriculture, industry, and the services. The second thing I want to just highlight is that there is a difference between, which I am sure ADG Delbi Singh would have mentioned in the presentation, that the growth rates in GVA and growth rates of output are different. The GVA is what the GDP measures, the gross value added. Services is only an output indicator, not a value added indicator, I think. So we just need to keep that in view. The third thing I just want to say is that we are developing this indicator without any additional burden, if I can say, or compliance burden that we are putting on any corporate or industry. It's entirely out of administrative data. So I think this is also the first time that fully we have administrative data, partly coming from the ministries, partly from GST. And that is a significant, and I think we've been talking about unlocking the potential of administrative data, which was in the National Statistics Day. That was the focus. I think this is really the valuing that collaboration across different departments. I also would like to thank the technical advisory group chaired by Debjani Ghosh and the others experts who were there who helped us over the past 1 year to design this. At this stage, I'm sure we've discussed that ISP primarily reflects the formal sector. I think we just need to keep that in view. And it is of 19 subsectors. I don't think I need to stress that. But this is part of our, if I can say, the menu to strengthen the statistical system in India. And we join a select few countries who have such an index. Very few countries have it, and I'm very happy to say that we are joining that group. And we will continue to take feedback from stakeholders to further strengthen the statistical system and this indicator in itself. So thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, please.
Though I'd already said it, Saurabh, but I do want to put on record in front of you the appreciation from the committee for the team at MOSPI. I mean, they've done a fantastic job from starting from extensive due diligence and assessment of every single data source that was out there. Endless debates on deflators and what needs to happen, and then coming out with a very honest approach to what it can be. So I do wanted to place that on record. Thanks.
Okay, coming back to Shishirji's question, Dilipji, would you answer?
Yeah, sure. So I think your first question was about because this is the trial series. So this is a trial series, and when will be the revisions will take place. So I think, as I mentioned, there are 3 important sectors which plan to cover, for example, health, education, and ownership of dwellings. And once that happens, it could be in a few months. It's a work in progress, and we hope that it will be done soon. And second part was, I think, that lag of, say, 60 days. I think as of now, GST data comes with a lag of around, say, 50 days or so. So I think this is the earliest that as of now, we can bring out. So if there is a improved GST data availability, then we'll certainly consider. Yeah, thank you.
Any more questions? Yes. 209.
Hello, ma'am. Ishan from Money Control. 2 questions. One, you said when a sector slows, we would like to know beforehand, within weeks, not months, as to what is happening with the economy. So what does this survey tell you in terms of consumption and all that's directed towards the CEA? And what does this say about that? Because this is also covering that West Asia crisis period. On the survey part, the weights were decided in the technical advisory committee report that were this. Are they fixed weights, or are they going to change every year the ASI-SSE is going to get released? And if not, then what is the time frame of change that you're looking at, 5 years or 3 years?
So I think as far as this numbers are impacted by West Asia crisis, yeah. So I think, it is clearly also visible in the indices that we have released now that there is an impact of the West Asia crisis, and hopefully this will, as and when the new data comes on, that will show us the revised series. As far as this ASIS survey is concerned, the survey is already ongoing, and we expect by next year we'll be able to receive the results from the survey. And whatever, because we will be using ASIS survey mainly for the weights purposes, because we have to decide upon the relative importance of the different subsectors at the 2-digit level of industry. So we expect that as of now, it is a fixed base index. So whatever the survey period 24-25, we are collecting the data. And same is the base year as of now. So I think it gels well with the data that will be coming from ASIS. It will be used as the weights, and that will continue for the series. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, 208.
So Siddharth from the Indian Express. Just wanted to understand, now we'll get GDP data for April, June, at the end of August. We all just look at the services sector performance from GDP data also. Should we expect ISP to broadly tally the services sector numbers from GDP? Or is there any reason there could be a divergence or not misalignment?
So I think I'll just take this one. I mentioned that we need to be careful that the ISP is a measure of output. GDP is a measure of gross value added. And output need not, it could, but it may or may not track or move in the same DVA. I'll just leave it at that. And just one other point I just want to make, which I'm sure would have been made, that we've been talking of having a retail consumption tracker. We now with an ISP and with services being produced at the time or consumed at the time they are produced, to that extent we have a retail sales consumption tracker for the retail services. So I think at least for these services, in a way, we have a production tracker which is also as good as a consumption tracker.
Thank you, friends. Thank you to all the officers and dignitaries on the dais. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.